So we all had a very stressful last week. There was the perpetual threat of World War III, the riots in Berkeley, but everything's fine this week. It's a very slow news week. We could all relax, right? Pluck? No. Donald Trump just literally started another war. The threat of World War III is bigger than ever it was, and the mainstream media is cheering it on, beating the drums of war in order to galvanize and manipulate the American public towards more chaos in the world, more conflict, more war, while denying you important information and manipulating you so you support it. And in this video, we're going to talk about that, plus a lot more with the current state of international affairs from a point of view that, of course, you will not get from the prostitute horse-dream media scumbag, bloodthirsty, warmongering, degenerate pigs that call themselves journalists in this country. Starting off, you have to understand what the US government and media is doing is the same exact thing it did to start many wars before. The same justifications, the same excuses, the same manipulation of facts, not investigating, not looking into anything but buying and swallowing all the talking points from the US war machine and military-industrial complex and shoving it back in our faces. And one of the ways they do this is with bogus fake poll numbers. As we know from coming into the 2016 election, Donald Trump's poll ratings were extremely low, and they were an inaccurate form of measurement because some of the things that he was saying when he was campaigning were very radical. Those poll numbers were lies by the media establishment trying to put him down. But now, since he's following orders, doing exactly like the deep state wants him to do, those poll numbers are high, manipulating them to make everyone believe that his latest hawkish, backtracking, flip-flopping policies are good and that you shouldn't move away from the majority of people and you should agree with him. And the supposed rest of the American public who is for him, totally capitulating on his views, campaign promises, and doing the most irrational thing he can with American foreign policy. And he has done a lot of irrational things, including the latest steps, which are being ignored by the US mainstream media, of how he just sent hundreds of US Marines to Afghanistan, further endangering our US soldiers in that battleground state. And this deployment is the largest single deployment of US Marines in occupied Afghanistan since 2014. Meanwhile, if we remember all the way back to the George W. Bush days when he first decided to invade Afghanistan, he made the promise to the American public that he would pull the troops out when the mission is done. And now 16 years later, 16 years of occupation, the mission is not done and won't be ever done because that was never the initial plan. They just lied to you. And it's not just Afghanistan that Donald Trump is sending US soldiers to face danger in, it's also Somalia. Now, you may not know about Somalia, you may not care about Somalia, but what Donald Trump has done is pretty much start another war with that country. And now, this week, for the first time in 24 years, US troops are returning to Somalia after the Black Hawk disaster that killed 18 American Special Forces troops. The United States is also conducting airstrikes inside of Somalia, and many people are asking the question, why the hell are we bombing and sending US troops to Somalia? Seems like a very common sense logical question, but yet the mainstream media is completely silent about it. And I think the answer is pretty clear. Last week we found out that Somalia holds one of the largest oil and gas reserves in the world. Now, the excuse the United States is using for this invasion and this bombing of Somalia is that they have to fight supposed terrorist organizations. Meanwhile, Al-Qaeda and ISIS don't really exist there. And if the United States really cared about destroying terrorists, they wouldn't fund them in the first place, as we found out a few days ago, as US-backed rebels inside of Syria committed a terrorist act that killed 126 innocent people trying to flee a Syrian city that was held by Al-Qaeda. And what's particularly sick about this event is that terrorists that the United States funded previously before targeted children with potato chips. And then when they had enough children surrounding the food that they placed, they decided to launch car bombs that killed over 60 Syrian children in evacuation buses. A horrible, tremendous human rights violation that you would expect would be mainstream media headline news like the Syrian gas attack that provoked Donald Trump to launch Tomahawk missiles into Syria. But no! Al Jazeera, CNN, BBC all covered up this horrendous criminal act financed and paid for by your US tax dollars. And if that doesn't get you angry, I don't know what does. It's very clear. The mainstream media works for the military-industrial complex. They work for the deep state. They're in this together in order to push for more war and conflict. They have blood on their hands, and they should be prosecuted, at least in my opinion, for war crimes, for allowing such atrocities to happen, covering them up, ignoring them, meanwhile having hypocritical double standards in order to push their agenda, which would not be possible if it wasn't for the mainstream media doing it for them. So how did Ivanka Trump react to this news? You would think Ivanka Trump would see the horrible, horrendous footage of over 60 Syrian children being killed by US-backed rebels, and Donald Trump would finally commit the major promise of his campaign and work with other foreign countries in order to defeat radical Islamic terrorism, right? No. What Donald Trump did this week is he sent his Secretary of State to Russia to tell Russia that you're either with the United States or you're with Bashar al-Assad. Russia responded by sending nuclear-capable bombers flying within 36 miles of Alaska for 2 straight days. The United States responded by scrambling fighter jets to intercept these 2 Russian nuclear bombers. And now we're just seeing a continual back-and-forth competition of who has the biggest penis between these 2 super world nuclear powers, as they're just maneuvering their military forces all around the world to be ready at any time to attack each other, just like we saw with Russia and China sending their military to the Korean Peninsula to counter the United States deploying 2 additional aircraft carriers to that region. And I have to say, I do agree with former statesman and former Congressman Ron Paul, who came out this week and said that the neocons in the Trump administration are pushing for a U.S. conflict with Russia. That is clear, that has been continued with Donald Trump's latest actions, and also made worse by going after one of Russia's biggest ally, Iran. So with all of this happening, with neocons and the deep state pushing him into more failed policies that have been continued for decades by George W. Bush and Barack Obama, with the mainstream media bought and paid for pushing for this, we can only expect the situation to get worse. Now, whatever develops, we will highlight and cover on this independent media channel, where you could actually get real important actual news of what's happening around the world, and not just pro-war propaganda that lies to you and really is just criminal. These people are outright criminals, and they need to be stopped. And the best way to stop them is by doing their job better, and that's been our mission here. And that's why we're a threat, and that's why we get attacked not only by the mainstream media, but also institutions like YouTube, who, with their new shifting algorithm, have almost virtually destroyed our entire income from this YouTube channel. To help fight that, please go to WeAreChange.org/donate and consider investing and donating to the future of destruction of the mainstream media, because ultimately, the best way to defeat them and take away their power is to prove their irrelevancy, to prove how they lie, to prove how they obscure, to prove the damn truth to the people of this world. If you support that, share this video. Thank you again so much from the bottom of my heart for participating, donating, watching, and being a part of We Are Change.